So in this video we're going to do some live exploratory testing, and we're going to focus on reconnaissance, the thing that we do first to learn the application. So I'm going to look at the Pulper, which is an application that I've written. You can find it on GitHub. Here is github.com/EvilTester/testing app releases. Now the Pulper is part of the full compendium of test apps, so you could download that and run that if you want. I've just downloaded the Pulper and I'm going to run that. So let me start that up. Java -jar the Pulper 120.jar. That should run. I've got my notes ready here. So I've got a file. I'm just going to make notes in a text file. I'm going to do essentially clean Recon, which means I haven't really thought in advance what I'm going to do. I'm not using any tools. It's not a mental one where I'm just going to be thinking about the app. I'm actually going to use the app. I've not created any templates or mnemonics or any goals for this. It's just a straight recon to see what we can learn. And I'm going to use plain text file to record my notes, because you get different outcome when you use mind maps from when you use plain text. So we're going to start as clean as possible to see what we learn. In future videos we might explore different ways of doing recon, but in this case it's as clean as I can get it. So the app should be running now. If I refresh that, there we go, it's running, it's on localhost. So what we've got here is, in the Pulper has multiple versions. I'm going to go down to version 1, and version 1 of the app is basically just a read-only app. So there's data hard-coded in the app that we can look at, and I can see the data there. So we know that it's basically just a read-only application. So let's see if there's anything we can even test in a read-only application. So if I just have a look around, I can see there's the menu option here, and the home takes me back to the main menu. There's a help file. Now this is rendering data. It's running locally from my machine, so the data must already be stored on my machine. So the question is, how do I know whether this data is correct? And already I can see that there's a bug here. This is saying Pulper is a simple CRUD application. Well, it's not a CRUD application in version 1. Version 1 it's a simple canned data application, and it says that down here, but in reality the help file should reflect that for the different versions that it's got. So the help file presumably is different for the different versions, but certainly each version should match this. So although I'm not looking for bugs at the moment, even when I recon the application, I'm still keeping my eye out. I'm still trying to observe as much as possible the application to get things that are useful. So let's make a note of that. Now, because I'm doing this fast, I'm not making very detailed notes, but I set up the file early so that when I write into it, I can save it. So we've got the main menu, we've got help. Menu takes us back to the main thing, help, menu. So what we can do is we can start to go meta with what we're seeing and try and build a model. So we've got the main menu here. The main menu is a set drop down. Now that's not normal HTML. There's not an HTML control that says drop down menu. So the person that's creating this has had to do some work to create a drop down menu. Anytime you do some work, there's the potential that we need to test this. Presumably this is a set of links. I can see the links appearing at the bottom there. So I need to check whether the menu links all work. In fact, I need to check whether all the links in the application work. Now I could do that with a link checker tool. And the link checker tool, whilst it will check all the links, won't check the semantics of the links. So it won't check that the books table link links to the book table. It won't check that the links that are in the table link to the correct book. So I can't test the semantics through a link checker, but I can test the structure in a link checker and see if the thing hangs together. So tools can support me, but they can't do all my work for me at this point in time. So what have we got here? Now, the menu is linked, so we need to see whether they work, the semantics of them. But we also got, is it CSS or is it JavaScript? At this point I'm not sure. I'm not going to spend the time having to look, but I would test this differently based on the type of menu it is. Now, a simple thing that I can have a look at is it responsive? Now, fun fact, when I first created this, the Z order was wrong and this menu would have been behind the screen. So I did do some testing on this earlier. So we know that this is supposed to be responsive. But is it? The menu is responsive in that it responds to the size. Does the table? The table responds. Now, that it doesn't respond brilliantly, but I think it's just pure HTML. Do the lists respond? So I haven't done anything complicated in here, which is why it's responsive, but we might want to have a proper look at that later on. So I'm just going to mark that down. Okay, so what have we got? So we've had a look at home, we've got the main menu. Again, I don't know if this is the correct menu. I don't know what options it's supposed to show in version 1. I don't have an oracle. I don't have an oracle for the data. I don't know if this is all the data we've got. So we need oracles for the data that's in there. If it was a full CRUD app, I could clear down the data and start again. But because this app has been released to people, I really need to test it for what it currently is. So I really need to know the scope for the data. Now in later videos, we'll have a look at how we can find the oracles, how we can go through that. But here I'm just going to mark down that I need to know the oracle for the data to know how to test it. So we've got a table. This table has links. The links go to the particular book that is shown. I can see that the URL is changing with each one of these. So I click on series, I can see that the URL is changing a series. Now this isn't an API, but presumably I can navigate around the app like this. So I don't have to do all my testing through link traversal. I can do it through URL manipulation. So I need to put that into my list of things for testing. So what we've got is we've gone through, we can see there's different views of data. Now I'm talking about views instead of screens simply because this might get reused at certain point. So I know that there's a view of a list. I know that there's a view of a table. They are essentially different screens because they've got different URLs, but they might get repeated. So I'm thinking in my head, views versus screens. So let's make a note of that. See if that makes a difference. So we've got all the entities, right? So in here, what have we got? We've got books, authors, publishers, series, and years. So it's important to understand not just the data, but the entities that they correspond to, because entities have relationships. So a book has an author. It has a publisher. So presumably all these publishers are listed in publishers. When I click here, I presume that I'll see the books for that publisher. So I'm seeing the publisher there, I can see the books, a list of books. So I can do some sort of internal consistency. I may not have an oracle, but I do have internal consistency of data that I can check. So the application itself can become an oracle of sorts. So I could look at the table of books, I could scrape this data off, I could look through the publishers, I could make sure that the list of books for each publisher list back to the list of books in total. I can see that I could scrape the data here and see that the publishers that are mentioned here are all mentioned on the publishers, and I can check internal consistency. Now in theory I could automate that if I wanted, but I can just do that manually as well. Now I don't know if there's any tools that can help me do that. So I might need to look at that. It's not the kind of thing that I normally do, so I don't know offhand tools that I can use to do that. Maybe we'll investigate that in a different video. So we've got our authors, we've got lists of the authors, we've got an FAQ thing here. What does that do? So that has a list of questions for each of these authors. Again, I can check internal consistency. Now I'm looking at that. Okay, so I need to make sure that those links can work. It goes off to Bing, checks the authors. So if I did link checking on this, I might tell it not to follow external links, in which case it wouldn't test this. So the FAQs need to be tested more interactively, and I need to make sure that the questions all render correctly, make sure there's no spaces in there, that the data gets injected properly, that each one of the searches matches the question that's actually put there. And it currently looks like only authors have got those FAQs. I wonder why. Now, what's interesting here is the URL structure hints that possibly more than authors have this. If I type, I guess, book, right, so I can navigate around functionality that doesn't actually exist in here too, and it's given me a different set of questions. So presumably book is in there and has a set of questions. So again, URL manipulation functionality not exposed by app directly. So I'm wondering what else is exposed and not exposed in version 1 here. So we've got the series, and again this is just entity, so we've already marked that down. Years, so this is going to be links, internal consistency, does the data work? We've got the search, so search has got actual functionality. Presumably I can type something in here and search. Are you sure you want to search? So this confirm searches does something. And now I've got what looks like the book list view, but with more links. So we were right to think in terms of views and can have HTML links in there. So again, I would now need to check that all of these go to the right place and are semantically correct. So not just that there are links that work, but that they work correctly. Now we saw that when I clicked search there, the dialog came up when that is in there. So there's some JavaScript on this page. So knowing that there's JavaScript in here, I'm wondering where else there is JavaScript. So I need to check that, because testing something that is CSS implemented is different from testing something that is JavaScript implemented. Something that is CSS is rendering, it might have an issue in different browsers. Something that's JavaScript might have compatibility issues in browsers. We can only test JavaScript in the browser. We can only test CSS rendering in the browser. Most of this app, we don't even need to be in a browser to test. I can make a URL call here. I could just say a get from curl or something, get the data back, parse the HTML to make sure it works. But some of it, like the menu here and the search, the GUI part, I need to test from a browser. And the question is, how much risk is there for cross-browser testing based on the CSS and JavaScript? Because I want my cross-browser testing to be risk-driven. I don't want to just say, well, this is going to work on multiple browsers, therefore I need to test on all the browsers. I want to focus in on the parts of the application that are risky for cross-browser. If it's very basic HTML, there's not a lot of cross-browser risk so long as the HTML is valid. So what I should do is I should have some HTML validation on here and put the application and check the HTML validation. I can probably do that automatically. Again, it won't check the semantics, it won't check the data that's in there, but it'll check the structure, and that'll give me some useful feedback in there. So what else have we got? So I can exit the page. I usually want to exit. Yes, goes back to the main menu. And again, does that confirm? Okay, so the confirm searches only does the confirm part. So I need to do a bit more work around search because of the JavaScript, and that is going to be an area for testing. But also, when I do a search, let's just quickly do this again, we can see that it's a get request. I know it's a get request because the URL was populated with the parameters. We can double check that it's a get request by doing an inspect in here, and on the form itself we'll see that it's a get. But I can also see that there's JavaScript in there. It's probably quite simple. There it is here. So with that level of JavaScript, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of cross-browser issues. That JavaScript is so simple. And if I really wanted to bypass it, I could bypass that quite easily. So we've got reports. What do reports do? So reports are showing me books as a table, which is probably supposed to be the same view as this, but without the URL. So again, I can check here for testing. Sorry, I was in the middle of making a note and then got distracted. So URL get manipulation for the search. So we got reports. Now, reports look like a non-link view of the other data. So I could test that by a comparison with the other views. If I had an easy way of doing a comparison, I could simply compare this static report table of books with the books table. Maybe there's a tool to help me do that. Maybe there's an easy way of doing that. Maybe I can do that side by side with the different pages and scroll down and see if anything obviously doesn't work. Maybe there's tools that let me get different browsers up and scroll down at the same pace. Again, it's not something I've done very much, so I need to look for tools to help me compare internal data and pages. What else have we got with reports? Are there any reports here that are, does all the reports look like they are the same as the previous menus? So that's just a consistency check. Admin, I'll leave out of bounds because that's just shutting down the app. In fact, we do the shutdown. But I don't want to do the different version tests because then that invalidates my testing of version 1. The thing about the Pulper app is it's got multiple versions built in, but each one of these versions is suitable for testing on its own. So all of these top level reports goes to a, so some of them go to a menu system, which corresponds with the drop down, but some of them have different options in there. So the menu top level different paths. So what else have I got here? Right, so we've covered quite a lot here. I've got some notes on what to do next. We haven't done a lot of testing, although instantly just by going through and clicking on this we can see that there's some bugs even at this level, because that's not one. So let's just make a note of that bug. Even though that's not on an all books list. So next thing we have to do, or next thing I will do in another video, is look through the notes that I've made and think about them, reflect on this to see what testing I can do. But this is just an example, because the video's probably gone on for a bit now, of doing a recon. This is a clean recon. I didn't start with a lot of prior knowledge. I haven't used any tools. I've just gone through the app, made notes to help me go forward. We found some bugs, we've got some ideas. This is the essence of a recon, but we can do recon in different ways, so we'll have a look at that in different videos. If you download this app from GitHub, it'll be interesting to see if you come up with different things in your recon, different ideas for testing. You might spot different bugs, you might come up with different tools and ideas. So if you want, leave comments in the video. That will help me understand how you've done it, or contact me, and feel free to ask questions about the recon that you've got. But pretty much even an app as simple as this has a lot of stuff that comes through in the recon and a lot of different ideas for how we can test the application. But a recon is the kind of fundamental first part of any exploratory process, even if it's just a mental recon to get in your head of what you think the app does and how you think it works. Because what we're doing is we're building up a model of the application, a model of how we think we're going to test it, a model of the risks, a model of functionality, a model of tools you might need, a model of things that are not part of our normal testing process that are unique to this application that we will need to use in order to test it. And that recon is kind of fundamental. So hopefully that video hasn't gone on too long, and hopefully there's some use in there, but leave a comment, let me know, and subscribe to the channel so that you can see any other videos, because I'm going to do more exploratory testing style live in action type videos, and this is kind of the most basic that we're probably going to do.